only a transition to a different sphere of consciousness. Carol Ann is not like those she's with. She is a living presence in their spiritual earthbound plane.
Hello and welcome to episode 42 of the Talking to the Dead podcast. As regular listeners will know, most of the things that have happened that have inspired me to do various episodes of this podcast have happened either through dreams or feelings, and this week is really no different. Last week I was in Melliton Cemetery, and that's on Aschener Strasse, which is a Roman road that leads essentially through the center of Cologne and is still there. But towards the end of that road, turns out that there is a former detention camp that was built in the 1940s by the German authorities in order to not only house Jewish people who were being deported from Cologne to the concentration camps where they would eventually be murdered, but also political prisoners and also some refugees from foreign countries. There were no death camps or concentration camps really in Germany. They were deliberately kept out of the country so that people didn't realize what was going on. The final solution, as Hitler called it. I came across some very strong feelings when I was in the Melliton Cemetery about things concerning the war. And I didn't realize at that time that deportation camp that was built was so close to the cemetery. So I'm going back there this afternoon to see exactly what's there still and what sort of feelings I get. But of course, as I was planning to do that, another coincidence came, and I was walking around an area very close to the Geusen Friedhof, which was also covered by an episode. And on the floor in front of a building were three brass plates that were sunken into the sidewalk pavement. I took a photograph of that, and that'll be actually the main photograph for this episode. And in that, you will see there are three people who were mentioned who were deported from Cologne during the war. And it tells its own story. One of them who actually committed suicide before I think he was deported. Another one who was deported and eventually presumed murdered in a concentration camp. And I think the other one, again, presumed deported and murdered, but definitely not alive at the point that people decided to worry where he was. And he's obviously gone down in the annals of history as being another victim of the Nazi final solution of the Jews. These brass plates are all over Cologne. And they show really the memory today of people who were living in the houses that you're looking at, who had their houses taken away from them by law. There were laws passed that meant that Jews could no longer own property, couldn't run businesses, couldn't do anything. They were basically being marginalized steadily from the 30s onwards until eventually they were all rounded up and deported and put into the camp that I'm going to today. And from that camp, that was a staging point, they would be put on cattle trucks or trains and taken to the extermination camps. But at the time, they probably didn't know that. They thought they were off to some sort of labor camp. And I'm afraid underneath Cologne, there is not only something historical, but also there's an awful lot of blood and death that has been more recently exposed through what happened to the Jewish people and political prisoners and also foreign workers in Germany. That was the second coincidence. Then the third coincidence that came was that last Tuesday I was preparing to go to work, and then I suddenly heard that they'd found an unexploded Second World War American aerial bomb. And now this is not so unusual, because whenever there's building going on in the city, you find unexploded bombs. As just one example, over the 30th, 31st of May 1942, there was 1,000 bomber raid over Cologne, and each of those bombers must have had 50 to 100 bombs. So you can just calculate for yourself how many in one night bombs were dropped on Cologne. And it's estimated that 12% of those bombs were duds and never exploded once they hit the ground or above the ground, or however they were designed. And so they're either still underground, or they have been diffused since, or they're hiding in forests or in the Rhine or somewhere. And again, it happened yesterday, another unexploded bomb in another part of the town. But that all came together. These three things came together and made me realize how important it is that I talk about this. And for whatever reason, someone somewhere wants me to talk about the Second World War. Then the fourth coincidence came. While I was doing some research into this deportation camp, I learned about another place in town, which I will visit next week, which was the former Gestapo headquarters. They were the German secret police, beholden to the Nazis during the Second World War. And they had a big building in town, which is ostensibly their former headquarters, but it was also a place of torture and examination. They would interrogate political prisoners. I think less so Jews, because I think they knew what the Jews were. They weren't interested in interrogating them. They're just interested in getting them out of the country as quickly as possible. But these political refugees were often there, and other foreigners, and they would be tortured and they would be kept there in prison cells. And towards the end of the war, as the Americans got closer and closer, they shot them in the courtyard of the building. So I'm going there next week. That is now a museum that's holding the records of as many as they've managed to find who were deported and murdered during the Second World War. So all of these coincidences came together. I obviously realize there's a message here. I can understand that some of my listeners will find this particularly upsetting. It's not the easiest thing to do myself. I'm sure that I will feel tremendous energy and emotion when I visit the deportation camp today. And I'm sure next week when I go to visit the documentation center, that it's called, where the people were tortured and killed. But it's something I feel I need to do. I live in probably a city that's experienced more violence and more death and more war than just about any city in the world. And it's strangely hidden here. You really don't feel it, of course. It's only when you start literally looking under the surface and finding out some history, if you can, from the internet, that you realize all of this past is there. And I can imagine that over the years, in most cases, they've tried to forget this, because we are quite a few years later now. But again, there are a lot of concerned citizens who don't want people to forget. But I will leave you for now, and I will be talking to you next when I'm actually inside what is called the Deportationslager Cologne-Müngersdorf. And this was originally opened in 1941 until 1945. So I will see you very soon. So I have arrived finally here. My feeling is I came off the Aachener Strasse, which is this Roman road that really was one of the main arteries to the Atlantic Ocean back in Roman times, when this was the headquarters of the Roman Empire. Outside of Rome, the main fortress that protected this area, and it was dominating the Franks and the Germanic tribes, and the Romans were here for hundreds of years. And another episode we're going to go and have a look at the Roman remains. But right here in this particular area here in Müngersdorf, all that's here really now is a great big sports park. It's just, I had such a feeling when I came past here, just to think what atrocities took place here. And now, apart from a modern art sculpture, and I don't even see anything written, it's just a sports park, and right opposite the sports park is the Rhein-Energie Stadium, which is probably one of the biggest football stadiums in Germany, and I just know that Taylor Swift was playing there a few weeks ago. So that's kind of how it's all been erased. As I walk on a little bit further now, I do actually see a plaque, so let's have a quick look at that. So I'm now in front of this plaque, which is sitting on top of a square brick thing. It's all in German, no attempt to make any translation to anyone, and it's headlined Gedenkort Deportationslager Cologne-Müngersdorf 1941 to 1945, which is just saying it's the memory for where the deportation camp was in those years. So as I climb up an embankment now that looks over where most of the buildings used to be, there's just a great big series of football fields for children to practice, and you can hear all the children. And just beneath me on a bench is a mother nursing her baby. A few people are walking around, but it's quite eerie just to hear the cries of the children as you come through the forest, and I can just imagine the cries of all the children who died here and all the people who died here, and I get such a strong feeling of that, this juxtaposition of school children, hundreds of them coming along from obviously a local school, and they're coming here to play, and they're marching along this road, and this road leading to the deportation camp, where I think 5,000 or 6,000, and maybe we don't even know how many people were forcibly marched along this road and ended up here in this detention camp. And many of them would die of disease and cold. There weren't proper sanitary facilities here in the camp. There wasn't medicine. You were just Jewish. You were considered to be vermin, and they were treated like you might treat a rat now. And it was perfectly socially acceptable in those days to do that. And you get that sense too when you come here how well hidden it is, because I'm sure it's the same as it was. Hundreds of trees all around it. It's very much shielded off, and you get the feeling that if you wanted to be quite far out of the city where people wouldn't know what's going on, you've really chosen a perfect place here. It's a beautiful park now and very popular with people, but you can certainly get that feeling just being here that it was so much more than that, barely 80 years ago. So now it's a place where people take their dogs for a run, and I'm walking past again this huge steel memorial that was only put up a few years ago, and I'll find a place to sit down. So now I've found a place to sit. It's right opposite this steel structure. It looks like a steel wall, and it's got punched into it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kind of almost like windows, so you can look through that. And I believe that was the entrance of the camp, and I suppose looking through those windows you're supposed to get the image of quite what people would be thinking as they were walking into this camp. The weather is suitably horrible. It's very humid and it's very cloudy, and you can feel spatterings of rain. It's slightly windy. A lot of atmosphere here. I can see leaves falling off the trees. I have a tremendous sense, I'm almost hyperventilating here. I have a tremendous sense of excitement, but maybe it's almost panic. So what I'm going to do now is ask Titan if he could come through after doing my protection rituals and see who's around and who wants to talk. Okay, so I have done my protection rituals now, and I'm sitting here with a very open mind and hoping that Titan can come through. There is a slow procession of people that just walk past me on this path, not many, just 1 minute or so. I can see more people in front of this memorial. And the first feeling I get very much is a sense of this atmosphere here, this tremendous atmosphere. Of course, it's known what happened here, but I'm getting this incredible contrast, a little bit like some of the contrasts that I got in the cemeteries. The fact that things are forgotten, maybe, but the things that happened here were of such magnitude, and there is so much energy here. It's the whole place is saturated with this energy of sadness, desperation, despair, and fear. A tremendous sense of fear I'm getting. And Titan is here. Titan, tell me something. Tell me what's going on. What's my feeling? What's it all about? She's saying that you're probably feeling a certain sense of blindness, and she's using that word blindness, not just because of light, but because of the way that things cannot be seen in the same way anymore. The whole environment has changed. None of the camps remain. Obviously, all the people who are here were deported long ago, but there is that sense in the community and in Germany post-war that we humans, we want to forget. We have this complete blindness to what's really happening here. It's as if we've got our eyes shut, and she's showing me that, and she's asking me to close my eyes. So I am closing my eyes, but coming through, she says, through even with your eyes closed, you can still see the light, and in fact, you can probably feel even more with your eyes closed than you can actually with your eyes open, because there is nothing so much to see anymore. There is just the memories and the feelings of what happened here. Okay, I got up from the bench that I was sitting at because Titan told me to come up to the memorial and actually hold it. So I'm walking towards it now, and I will go and hold the memorial, and I'll look through one of these cuttings in the steel. I can see that people have put pebbles, I suppose, like Jewish people put on top of graves. So yes, I think that she wanted me to see that. That in a way, that's the only kind of recollection that this is actually almost this is a gravesite, and so many people have been killed here, and so many people have died, and she says so many people took their own lives here. The sheer terror of what was happening. She says that there are the energy memories here of children, loads of children, women, men, and the deprivation that these people suffered, being made to leave their houses and their possessions and their jobs and their families, or their relatives indeed. She tells me how she can certainly sense people who are in love, who have lost their loved ones. They've been forcibly separated from their husbands or their wives because they were in mixed Jewish relationships, and at one point that became illegal, and the Jewish members of that relationship were moved to this internment and deportation camp, which was the first step, as I read somewhere actually, to hell. It was the next step after this was Auschwitz and Belsen and all the death camps. I have a strong feeling as I'm touching this memorial now and just feeling the atmosphere. I can sense people were here and they were in this environment and probably in some way felt safe. I feel that. They must have felt that maybe being moved away from the central part of Cologne, and the houses and all the violence and all the anti-Semitism, they could be at least together in some sort of community. And I get a feeling that a lot of the people here, their energy was also a sense of hope that this could be the beginning of a life where they would not suffer the prejudice that they'd probably suffered for many years. There's a sense of incredulity here too, that they didn't really know what the true purpose of this deportation camp was. And it was probably not even called a deportation camp, it was probably called a displacement camp or maybe a refugee camp. So there's this very strange, I can only describe it as a lie. That's what, in a way, that's coming through. I feel Titan is saying to me, I'm standing here in one great big lie where people were told untruths, they were told lies in order to cooperate. And I feel people saying, yes, we did. Why we trusted, they don't know, but they trusted the lie. They thought, because they were German citizens as well, that their own citizens wouldn't do this to them, just because they were Jewish. I have somebody who's coming through, and he's saying, he hasn't got a name, it's just an energy, but he is saying to me that, he said that it's an irony that the Jewish people were one of the earliest groups to actually live in this region from about 200 or 300 AD. They set up communities here, and they were more than part of what is modern Germany in those days than probably most Germans. They were not from the even Germanic tribes, they were from much older tribes that had settled here. And they really believed that this community belonged to them too. Somebody is saying to me, we were happy here. We had lives, we had families, we had very good professions. We worked hard, we were educated. We were middle class, upper class. And yet we were herded into this place after being bullied out of our homes and out of our jobs and out of our economic and social livelihoods. And we were brought to this place which was so demeaning, because there was nowhere to really have proper food. There wasn't running water here. It was like, I'm getting that sense, it was like camping, but without the fun, without the excitement. It was sometimes for weeks, sometimes for months. As I'm standing here now again facing this memorial and I'm looking around, the light is very bright in the sky. It's a white filtered light, and I'm getting again feeling of people who are outdoors in the rain like this. I have a feeling that not everyone had a hut or a tent or whatever it was to live in. There were people who were actually out, and they were in the freezing cold in the winter, and they were getting wet and they were dying of exposure. And people were just, again, I get this sense of people who are so used to having something and having a house to live in were suddenly here with nothing. And it just, I feel, as I get a little wet now with the rain on top of me, I have that sense like I'm going to get wet, but I have these people coming around me telling me, you have just even the slightest idea of the discomfort that we had to go through in this camp while we were waiting to be sent off to where we didn't know. Or there were rumors, there were people who said they knew, but we weren't too sure that what was going to happen. We couldn't quite understand that our fellow countrymen would actually do what they did to the majority of the people who were in this camp and other camps. I was feeling quite dizzy there. I was standing there and feeling dizzy, but I had a feeling that there was a doctor here, and this doctor was trying to tell me how he was not the only doctor, because there were so many people from very intellectual and cultural, as well as medical and scientific backgrounds here, people who are chemists. And they didn't have any form of medicine, really. They had no way of helping. But because they were in nature and there were plants, This doctor said that he was not very far away from here. He was trying to gather plants, and he was trying to make medicines from the plants. And he was known amongst the inmates of the camp as the person people could come to if they had certain ailments that he felt he could help them with certain leaves, certain flowers. And he said, people would have quite often very serious skin rashes and skin infections. And he managed to create ointments and various compresses, he said, that he could give to people to help alleviate the pain and the suffering of sort of the ulcers and the cuts and the chafing that they had, all from being cold and wet. This doctor, he's telling me that he would like me to make this known, that yes, that there was huge inhumanity outside, and yet the people within this camp, he said, they did their best to remain a community. They tried to practice their Jewish faith. They tried to help the children and the women. They tried to ration out their food that they had to help the children live a bit longer and not suffer from malnutrition. There was true self-sacrifice here on behalf of the Jewish community to help its own in a time where nobody was helping them, and quite opposite. They were doing their best to basically kill them. Another man just came up to me. He said he's a chemist, or was a chemist, and he also was a perfumer in Cologne. I'm not sure. He said that he had a lot to do with eau de Cologne, which is the famous cologne. And he said obviously there's a certain amount of historical whitewashing that is going on, but a lot of the people who were involved in the eau de Cologne business were Jewish, and it still made no difference. They were exported as well. But he said he was here with a number of his family who were part of the eau de Cologne family. I must look into that. But and he said that he didn't stop doing what he did best. He actually also went around gathering in the summer. He went gathering plants and flowers, and with the available water and things, he tried to make nice scents. And he would give bottles of that away for free to people, and it would at least take away the smell, because he said that a lot of people just couldn't have proper showers here. There just wasn't really the proper facility that you could get water. He said you could wash, you could even wash clothes. He said there were points where you could take water from a pump or a bucket, but he said you can imagine what the smell of hundreds of people in a place like this was like. And it's just interesting that he talks about eau de Cologne, and they try to perpetuate that even in these situations. I'm getting someone through now who said he was here, and there was bombing. He remembers the bombing, and quite often the bombs would drop, and more often than not, of course, the people who were dropping the bombs on this part of Germany wouldn't probably deliberately drop bombs on a camp, but it was pretty indiscriminate how a bomb would drop, and there wasn't an awful lot of guidance, and so many bombs missed their targets. And in this particular area, of course, quite cynically, there were a lot of factories deliberately built around the camps and around this area. And he's saying that some of the people who were working in these later on in the war, some of the people who were working in these camps as almost slave labor, they would live in this camp during the day, and then they would be marched to work in these factories near here. So of course this was also a legitimate target for the Allied bombers, and he remembers that there was bombing, and people were killed when the bombs were dropped, and buildings were damaged, and fires were set, destroying some of the huts as well as the big fort that was nearby here. I feel, and he's kind of showing me in my mind's eye these factories and the communities that were here then, and the people would walk up and down this road in order to get to their work. And he said that right at the very beginning, people could just about come and go without being harassed. But he said later on, a few years later, they put guards there and they put police there, and they would stop people from leaving this area, and they could only go kind of chaperoned to work as slave labor in the factories, and they really couldn't go in or out of this area anymore. I sense a man who was around here, and he said that he used to try to keep his family warm, and they would go into the forest around here, which he's saying was looking completely different from the way it is now. He says most of the trees you're looking at have all grown since the war. There's very little left, because he said most of the wood was cut down and it was used as firewood or building materials. But what little wood there was, they would try to capture themselves and use to burn things, and even maybe sometimes to cook. So on the other side of the wall now, this metal wall, and it kind of reminds me of a sort of a piece of the Berlin Wall, except of course it's just made from stacked metal, almost looking like massive big rail lines stacked on top of each other. And on the other side there's far more rocks and even a red candle lamp. And there's a very interesting piece of stone which I'm holding, which is not a normal piece of stone. And I'm getting that very strong feeling when I'm touching it. It comes from a building that was nearby. It was probably a wall that was made as part of a prison, and it's sitting here. It's definitely just concrete, a bit like you would find on those remnants of the Berlin Wall. There's a piece of red brick here, which has got a bit of faded paint on the other side. And again, that's clearly come from a building that used to be here. I have a feeling that all the buildings were destroyed at one point. I think the whole place was probably knocked down not long after the war. A big chunk of really ancient basalt stone here. And that must be, that's what the Roman roads were made out of. So they're probably still around here from the Roman times. Little bits of basalt, and some little bits of stone, some pebbles. So many stones you might expect to find, but also bits of stone that have clearly been brought here for building purposes over hundreds and hundreds of years, nearly thousands of years. And then I have a white sort of, it's like a slab of butter, but it's obviously much smaller, and it's some child or something has drawn on it, and it's got in silver letters VTUN on it. I don't know what that means, with sort of red strokes coming out from the letters, with sort of a blue dashing around the edges, and on the underside it looks like somebody's written something in black ink or black paint, but I can't read it really. It's like Ellie or something. And there's another piece next door to it, another white stone. Again, it's got lots of colourful things on it. And I think it says MUR on it, more. And on the other hand, it's got love. On the other side, it's been painted on a pink background, love with hearts. That's sweet. And another one, another white stone, and somebody's written in red ink, Hoffnung. And it's got on the other side, and you turn it around, all the rainbow colours, green, blue, red, and it's got pink, which isn't a rainbow colour, but blue. It's a lovely little stone some children have put here, I presume. So now I'm just going away from the memorial, and I'm going to carry on this street, which comes off Aschenerstrasse, which is the Waldfrieden, and that's the main road. I think they call it the Memorial Road now, but that was the main road that people used to take into this camp. So I'll see what else I can find. So on my bicycle now, and I've come really to the end of this particular street, and I'm going down a rocky kind of shale street behind where the barracks used to be. Well, somewhat ironically now, at the back of where the camp was, all these makeshift camps where they kept all the people, it's now what Germans call a Schrebergarten, and these are kind of community gardens, and you can buy or rent little sheds basically, and each shed has an allotment, and you can grow fruit and vegetables. And again, just seeing that, I just had flashbacks and feelings about what people must think of that now. On the ground, they've laid a path made from stones, but bricks, I think, on their side, and it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 15 to 20 bricks wide, and it's like a seam that goes through this area. I think I read about it, I'm not sure, but I think it must show the dimensions of where this camp was and where these various buildings were. So now I've done a full circle around where the camp used to be, and on the other side where is a beautiful, huge, great big grass area. It's been well maintained. It's cut and everything. It's not wild. It's just a great big open space, and I'm sure it's exactly as it was after they demolished everything. So now I'm sitting between the back of the camp, underneath like a concrete place where you can sit. It's got a circular chair, and there's a circular piece of concrete above me protecting us from the rain, and a couple of dogs are sniffing around me. I can see on my right the young men all playing football, completely oblivious, I'm sure, to quite what they're playing on top of and everything that happened there. And yes, I get this an amazing feeling of things carry on. It's the same way that I feel like I ended last week's episode in the cemetery. It's a very strange, ironic thing that only history can do. Only history can do this to you, making you understand that time moves on, and what's happened in this particular area in living memory just in the 1940s was atrocious and appalling and inhumane as to how people were treated. But that has also happened in history in this area in Roman times. And as we know, down the road in medieval times, opposite the Melitton Cemetery, there was executions and torture of the most heinous type, and killing and man's cruelty to man. But here we are in 2024 in August. You know, I doubt that really anybody around me here really knows what the purpose of this particular park was. And I walked past an old man, and he was walking his dog, and he must have been in his 80s. And as he went past, he looked at me, and then he just broke into this beautiful, loving, wide smile. Now, I don't normally get that in Germany very much. People are very respectful in public. They don't generally show emotions or kind of recognize you. It's almost considered rude if you're walking past somebody. If you said good morning. I know that sounds strange, but people like to have their privacy here. And I sometimes used to get into trouble by saying good morning as I was walking past, because that's what we do in England. But hey. Well, as you can probably hear, perfect timing. The rain is really starting to come down, and I was led to this lovely place where I'm completely shaded, and it's fine. I feel good, and I have a sense that Titan is here with me still, and she's also wanting me to feel that. She wants me to feel, that I am protected, and that I'm one of the lucky people in a new generation that doesn't have to go through what I've just seen, and is shielded from the elements and isn't going to get wet. But at the same time, you get that feeling of what people must have felt here in the middle of a forest, taken away from their homes and their families, getting wet and getting cold. And there was really no great prospect that things were going to improve for them after that. Yes, Titan says they were nearly done, but he just wanted to say one thing. He says that what I can feel is, and it's true, is this sense again that there is very little that's here anymore. There isn't any great memory of people. She said that there are people who have come through, some spirit entities that have come through that are very happy to be with me and to share with me the energy and the atmosphere that I felt. But he said there is not so much a memorial, there's not a grave site here. There is no great memory of the people here anymore. It's a great big park, it's full of sport, it's full of activity, it's a happy place of recreation. But she's saying to me, it's the same feeling that you felt in the graveyard. But what is important to note is that there are people here who will come and who will be part of the energy and will be able to inform people who come here to look. The reason they're coming here is not because it's a happy place or they particularly want to come here, but there are tremendous memories here, and they have left energy behind, and that does attract them to this place. There is an area, she says, where I'm standing very close to, which has a tremendous amount of energy still from prayer. There was a particular space, and I believe it's in front of me here, between what look like silver birch trees, and I'm not sure, I'm not a botanist, other types of trees. And I'm being told that in this exact space where I am now, people would pray. They would practice their Jewish faith. They had to do it in hiding. They couldn't really be seen, so they would hide under trees when they weren't being seen. But that energy is here, and it's the energy that people felt safe enough and confirmed enough in their own religion that they would carry on celebrating their faith. And she's telling me that some people brought here the few possessions they were allowed to bring, which was usually, she says, bedding, mainly bedding, because you had to provide your own bedding, and a few little mementos if you could. But they would often bring religious things, because the religion, once you'd been stripped of all your dignity, you'd been stripped of all your possessions, you'd been stripped of your job and everything else, the only thing that they couldn't take from you was your religion and your faith in God. And this was so important to people. And this is why there is that atmosphere here still, because there was a lot of faith, true faith in God, and that has created a very strong energy presence here. All right, so thank you very much for listening, and thank you very much, Titan, for coming through. The rain has stopped. The sun is trying to poke through the clouds. I feel a tremendous sense of tingling. I feel that energy now. I feel that that energy that can only come from goodness and love and faith, in spite of all the horror and the terror that happened here, all the sadness, all the murder, all the suicide. In spite of all of that, people had faith, and they believed in something, and it helped them make what seems to be almost impossible to understand, the suffering. It made it almost slightly bearable. Thank you.